Are you working in a job that sucks balls? Does your job suck and ergo your life? Do you want to change that because your life is sucking? Join the TBP Slack. Get a better job.
All right, welcome to the Bitcoin podcast, everybody. You know who it is. It's host number 3, Jessie Broke, and I'm here with Alycia, and I'm also here with Chad Knight.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Chad. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and for the people who are listening, tell me about what you're doing. What do you do for a living, and how does that intersect with crypto?
And why am I here? What am I doing here? So, yeah, that's a great question. And, given that question, if you would ask me a year ago, I probably would have had a difficult time answering it. But so just briefly, my background is I grew up in Ohio, ended up getting into skateboarding really heavily pretty young, which was just like very attracted to kind of the unlimited potential and unlimited creativity you could have with it. Not a lot of rules, no coaches, no hours, no required anything. You do when and where you want to. So I got really into that, got sponsored relatively young. And when I turned 18, I moved out to California and became a professional skateboarder, and did that for probably 15 years, way too long, a long time. Yeah. So that brings me to trying to kind of figure out how do I get out of this? How do I transition into something else? And I had this great opportunity that my friend presented where I was doing skate park design for a little bit, and it exposed me to the 3D tools. So, and again, I had that same kind of shared passion that I had with skateboarding, and that same level of excitement of whoa, you can literally do whatever you can think of in here, as long as you can come up with it, and as long as you have the discipline to learn it, and trial and error.
Yeah.
So many of the same things that you go through. So, and then, trying to actually figure out how to get a job then after this, so
yeah,
the skate park thing didn't last long, but then I moved into footwear, because in skateboarding during my career, I had a signature shoe. So I have experience with the footwear design and development process. And I had friends at footwear companies. So I basically bugged enough people enough times to get my hands on a computer that had 3D software on it that I could learn. And at the time, when I said that I had done it for too long, at this point I was staying on a friend's couch. So the career was kind of on a downward path. So I locked myself in a room for 6 months and taught myself the software, just YouTube University, and got to the point where I felt comfortable having or applying for a job in footwear. I felt like I knew what I was doing enough. Got a job at DC Shoes doing that. Was the only person there doing it. So when I came in, I was working in the development part where it's kind of CAD based, a lot of engineering 3D stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
And, in every industry, when people say digital or 3D, they just think it's that stuff.
So let me ask you this. Did you use Blender? What is it? 3ds Max, SolidWorks? What were you using?
So this is where it's funny. I initially learned on Cinema 4D, which is very similar to a Maya 3D Max. It's a parametric polygon modeling for visualization, as opposed to when I started at DC. They're like, cool, here's Rhino. This is what you need to do for all these engineering files. And I'm like, I have to go back to YouTube University now and learn how to do Rhino in a week. So that's what I did. But I always still had that love of the visualization side of it.
Yeah.
I always really wanted to explore that. So again, not having anybody else around me that did 3D yet at this point. I'm still just kind of on an island. I was under the assumption if you do 3D, you do all of it. You know all of it. So I learned CAD, I learned polygon modeling, I learned animation, I learned motion graphics, rendering, materials. I just learned the whole gamut.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot.
There, then I went on to Vans to manage a visualization team. And then I moved over to Nike about 5 years ago to oversee the 3D footwear design team.
Okay, I have a question here.
Mm-hmm.
How did your experience from like being a pro skater and actually using the shoe, knowing how it feels in the wear and tear to that, and then designing it versus maybe some of your colleagues who maybe are just coming straight from school or something like that, is different in your design concept? I mean, was your experience of being someone who's like, I know how these shoes feel?
Oh yeah, I mean, listen to the voice of the athlete is what Nike is always saying, and that is essentially what that is. Like, as a user, here's what my feedback is. And yeah, I don't think, had I not been forced to kind of understand the mechanics of a shoe and why it does what, that's been super helpful moving forward. Because otherwise I wouldn't really even know where to start. Like, where do you start to even draw on this thing, or But so going back to the Vans portion of my career, that's when I started to just do more managerial stuff and didn't do as much creative work. And I didn't want to lose the progress I was making with learning. And I also still kind of was, craving a creative outlet. So I started, inspired by Beeple. I committed to just doing one render every day, something, just at least sit down and put myself in the 3D application, no matter what it is, just to keep familiar with it and just make sure that I'm not losing anything and I'm continuing to learn. And then it very quickly just kind of turned into this, like this beast, like its own thing, you know what I mean? Like, it turned into a real outlet for me. And I've always been fascinated with art and really wanted to pursue it, but I never had a medium that I could control well enough that it felt like that I could really use to communicate my stories that I wanted to tell. So again, it's just kind of snowballed, you know what I mean? And it's like, as I learn more, my work, I think, gets better because I have more tools to at my disposal. And yeah.
Interesting. So you really picked up a lot on the job, but then also on your own.
Yeah. So the job part is definitely kind of where I put to work the things I learn outside of work. So, and it started before I even got a job doing it professionally. So, and it's also just, again, like this comparison to skateboarding, I sound like a broken record, but there's just something there where there's just such a connection with it, in terms of you just kind of want to always do it. You know what I mean? It's just, the passion is just there so much. But so, yeah, like I would go home and I would try to figure out, knowing what other softwares and techniques were out there that we weren't using at whichever company I was working for at the time. I would go out and explore that stuff. So I was always trying to stay apprised of what the newest technology was, the newest software, but just, wanting to keep learning with it, but also, just having fun with it too, and not having take it too seriously. And that's why I've never really done anything with it professionally. I've sold prints here and there, but like just when someone else was willing to help me set it up, because like I said, it was just a hobby and it was an outlet for me. And it was just, up until very recently, something that I had made about $800 total from over the last 5 years. So it wasn't really anything I was pursuing.
Sounds similar to what we do with the podcast. Interesting. Okay. So when you said something that I'm keen on using as a transition. So you said you stay apprised of new technology, which kind of is a good transition for us to talk about crypto.
Yes.
So how does this happen? When am I going to get NFT shoes?
Oh man, you need an avatar first, or it depends on what you mean by NFT shoes.
I guess Yeah, tell me everything. I have no idea where Nike fits into like the NFT community. Like what are they doing?
Well, I can't speak to that. I can tell you that they're doing things though. There's conversations being
All
had.
those contracts.
Oh,
Sign.
Yeah, I haven't been through the public speaking course yet at Nike. But essentially, it's a very simple concept. It's an NFT is essentially an asset class or a vehicle of being able to take digital assets and put them onto the blockchain and have them tokenized, in which you can then prove ownership. You can prove scarceability. You know what I mean? And that's the real main point. It's just the way I look at it is it's just the marketplace for the metaverse, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be art is the thing. Mm-hmm. Like it can be skins for your avatar. It can be the deed to your house. It can be you do a virtual house. You know what I mean? All it is a digital asset, and you package it up in this technical term and stuff, or whatever. Non-fungible just means it's an item. It's not like a class of currency. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting though, because I think that it's just come so late into the game that's why there's this rush into it right now. I feel like they probably have been around for a long time, but I feel like this technology is coming very late into the game, and it should have been around for a while at this point. It's like you've got the virtualization of all these things. You've got the 3D environment, which is like the 3D software and virtual intelligence and all these things, but the marketplace for it and being able to prove ownership of virtual assets, it just seems like it's coming really late in the game, but I'm very happy it's here.
So what do you have you done any modeling for like Decentraland? Have you looked into that? Curiosity.
Was just talking. Yes, I'm going to be exploring that as of tonight.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's my goal really with all of this is being able to create virtual worlds in game environments and just deploy those and have sculpture gardens and just this fun interactive experiences where, just with where the technology is going, it's going to be so hard to distinguish from reality very soon in these, and it's going to be, people are going to be spending a lot of time, I think, in these environments. So I definitely want to explore how we can make the most of the virtual worlds, because again, you're not limited by physics. There's proximity, there's no limitations. Yeah. And the NFTs just connect right into it.
Chad, you had said two things. You said like with your digital stuff that you were doing as a hobby and really into as your creative outlet, that you made maybe at most the past 5 years is like $800. Yeah. And at the same time with this NFT market that has just kind of exploded, even though it's kind of been around within crypto for a little bit, but this last year it's just really just went popping. Yeah. What was it about this market, this digital thing that you also said that, this should have been something that's been basically part of the internet from the beginning or some fashion already. What was it particularly about this? Because there's been some other things that people have tried to do to kind of monetize digital art to help artists or people have control, that you think artists are just going hog for the NFTs?
Well, I think that buyers are going hog for it, which has made the artists go hog for it. I don't know what the tipping point was. I think Beeple's release into the crypto art, or his entrance into it, because he's I would call it Beepleism if I had to coin what this is. But he was just the first one to do it, and he's inspired all of us. But I think that when he came onto the platform, and he's got such a big name outside of 3D even at that point, I think that brought a lot of attention to it. And then the fact that it sold for $6 million, I think that first one was huge. So that was like, then it went on the news, and then you start hearing more and more about it, and then it just kind of hits that tipping point. So, but I think that it should have been. It seems like the hype over Bitcoin and Ethereum and the crypto should have been a result of that marketplace
of art.
Yeah. Like that's why I feel like it went a little bit backwards, because you want to like understand what the purpose is of having these tokens or these assets before you just start buying them.
It's interesting because you're saying that we put the wagon or the cart in front of the horse, but there's still more cart that we're still putting in front of the horse,
Yeah,
which is
there's still more wagon.
Because storage of these NFTs is being done in mostly a centralized fashion. So it's interesting because for posterity purposes, right, your NFT could be swapped. And so that media could be swapped out.
I think, because there's ways to code that in too, right? To where, I mean, you can have it update itself or the ability to update it.
Yeah. So from what I understand, like the hash that it's so there's like JavaScript that I'm assuming, the way that I've seen like crypto zombies work in the past is they pull like a hash, like they being like the JavaScript code pulls the hash and then transforms it by referencing that, like converting that hash into a URL or like some sort of reference to the media itself, which the media itself, that image or that video or that tweet or whatever, that song is hosted on somebody's centralized database more often than not. And so now we're having this problem where now we're going to have to create essentially, you remember LimeWire or BitTorrent in the past, right?
Yeah.
So we're having to like recreate those structures, but a crypto version so that we can store, NFTs decentralized.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's more of the cart that's coming. Yeah.
I would imagine that, I mean, it seems like there's so many optimizations still happening just in the crypto space in general that, I mean, it's remarkable to me as someone who's fairly new over the last couple of years, like how much there still is to do or it can be done. But yeah, so I would imagine that there's a lot of cart still coming.
There's a lot of cart.
I'm sure.
My question for you is, as an artist, like with the amount of control that the NFTs, I think, with the smart contracts give an artist, that's something that maybe they didn't really have before. Is that something that an artist even wants? Because I know this is like a dialogue that within our creative communities, like about monetization, about control, about just doing it, that type of freedom. I mean, is this something that really does give people the freedom that they're seeking to have a complete say in their art? Or are we just fooling ourselves again?
Oh, that's a great point. And no, I think that I don't think there's anybody who's, well, I'm sure there are some people, but I don't think there's anything against the money that people are getting for their work that they've been doing for years, just out of the love of it. And so, I mean, I'm just trying to think how to answer this. So in terms of like, are we fooling ourselves? I think we are, by saying that every and any NFT is worth $100,000.
Yeah.
It's like going into an art store or a museum and saying everything in here, or that's a terrible example. I think, let's say there was garbage art in that museum as well, right?
Yeah.
Walking in and just saying art is worth $100,000. At some point, people are going to start to notice that it's just a marketplace. So, I mean, there are people who are changing their style and stuff, I think, to address these consumers. But at the same time, like, it's no different than us selling in a normal gallery, except the certificate is digital, or it's a virtual certificate. So I think that there's a lot of people rushing in a bit blindly to some of this stuff. But I'm very confident, like, in the future of it and everything. But no, I mean, I don't think we're fooling ourselves.
Okay.
But that's a really fair question, I think.
Well, I think it's something that's often, as a creative, that's bantered around. How much do you want to monetize? How much, like you said, some people are changing their art to address the consumer, and that can for some people that can eat into them. Some people like, okay, that's the thing that I sell, so I can do the thing that I need to do. And these are the trade-offs and stuff like that. And I'm wondering if the NFT market, with the high value of it and the ability to, in some sense, with the smart contracts to have the control where you, what was it? There was an artist that like kind of took his art back. Had like
he changed like thousands of them to like I forget, like something dumb. He
yes.
swapped the art behind it.
To swap
NFT.
the art out. Like the type of creative control that you could have, maybe it's too much or too many choices. I just wondering if for the sake of the art, like if it's, I don't know, maybe it could be too much, maybe it's too little, or maybe, like I said, it could be like a grand illusion where we're just creating another bigger cage box that we're already in, you know?
I think that we just opened up a new level to a video game, and there's so much to explore. It just seems overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it does seem overwhelming
because it's a whole new way of being able to sell, and it's a whole new way of even being able to package up assets and sell them. You could sell them, you know, by frame or by part or whatever, you know. But
yes,
I know that even the small sacrifices some of these artists might be making to their integrity with their work.
Yes.
The fact is, they're normally chasing contract work all day long.
Yeah.
And this is going to be so game changing in terms of giving freedom to artists to have the time to focus in the resources to be able to start doing some incredible stuff, because a lot of these guys in the past, and girls and women have been doing this on like laptops, you know what I mean? Like just with very crude instruments.
Yes.
And I think there's just going to be this whole wave of creative beasts, I feel like, coming out.
I've been watching the digital and NFT market, and I've seen from like kind of really crude kind of pixel, and then there's like someone's doing this, and then someone's like a really good pixel artist comes in and does it, and then there's like this kind of wave of change, and then you see the progression of some artists. They started out this way to another way. It's just like with it, even with like Instagram feed when they're artist or photographer, and you can catch them from the beginning and just see or going back and seeing the change in real time, really. Yeah. And it has to do with the ability of them being able to sell some of their work and then upgrading and changing and learning. And you see that progression. And it would be fascinating, like if you were to get a collective of work, say like, for example, like the Picassos, you know, have the collection, because it seems like digital Picassos where you see the different changes or moods of particular artists that you can follow or own. And I'm very hopeful, because I've talked to a couple people that are in the digital works. Like, you really need to look into this as an opportunity for you to at least pay some bills.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the evil in it? I mean, it's something that you've worked hard on and you're proud of it, and you want to, if someone else wants to enjoy it, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's great. And I think, like I said, it just empowers people to be able to do more of it and be able to do more stuff for themselves. My cat is here. But I think that there's going to be different little factions that split off of this too. You know, there will start to be different markets for different types of art, or maybe this one's just for audio, or, you know what I mean? Like it is just that marketplace. So I think that the progression is going to go really quickly, because people are just going to constantly be able to one up one another or progress their own work for a long time, at least, just because there's so much opportunity in this space still. You know, like none of us have had the resources to really go try to put a video game together. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is going to be phenomenal in terms of what it's going to do. But then I think something else that's really interesting is when you watch the artists or when you look at the careers of artists historically, they had very little change to the tools they use, and their craft was what it was, and they just mastered it over and over. And with digital and virtual artists, there's constantly new techniques and new tools coming out and new methodologies and new ways of doing things. And I think technique so heavily influences at least my style and whatever it is that I'm working on. I think you'll see a new kind of speed of evolution of artist styles. And I think that there might be even more of an expectation for that from people moving forward, just because you can learn more quickly and you can output much more quickly, I think, with virtual and digital tools.
That seems fair. I think that makes sense. Speed of art is going to go faster.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I couldn't do an oil painting every day for 5 years. I don't think.
But your hands would be like this, probably.
Well, I just don't think I would get much done. Like, I would just think that those things take a long time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. And I have a really strong hand too.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I don't know where to take this now.
Well, I think what would be good is, so a lot of us coming into this crypto art space are very familiar with the art piece and kind of catching up on the crypto part. I think a lot of us have been interested in the space for a long time, just because it's kind of an alternative DeFi thing, and we're all a little bit off center. But I think that at least I can speak for myself. I know a decent amount about cryptocurrency and how it's created and its purpose and how it's used. But now a lot of us are trying to fill in the gaps really about, like, okay, well, what does this really mean? And how's this happening? And what are the different coins for, you know what I mean? And all that. So I think it would be great if you would be willing to give a little bit of a perspective from your side on how you would explain this. And if you could explain it more simply than I've been able to.
Sure. So I'll give it a whirl. I'm not sure if I can do it justice. So I came into this space, just a little bit of pretext is I came into the space probably late 2016, early 2017, in terms of like actually digging into information about cryptocurrencies and actually eventually trading them, right? Other than that, it had been on my periphery from, just being online, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd seen little kids trading video game skins for Bitcoin. And I was like, what is this? Why don't you just get a PayPal account? Why don't you use Skrill or something else? I remember it didn't click with me. I don't even know how it clicked with me in 2016, 2017, but I know that I think it came from me being in a position where I wanted to know more about money. That's what happened, right? I wanted to know more about money. And I knew that I'd been playing video games since I was 9. And I know about video game markets, and they're not too different than real world markets.
Yep.
And later on, sometime during my later teenage years, and school, like I went beyond just kind of like how you did. The onus was you need to, get off the couch. You need to have something for yourself. And so for me, that was like, okay, so if we're all working for money at the end of the day, what is money? How do I get more of this thing, this resource, to give me more time to do what I would like to do, right? I think we all kind of like approach money like that. Maybe some people want money for the sake of money. Other people want money because it affords them this universal resource to free up their time.
Yep.
And so, I went like the traditional market route. I learned about different tools that are offered there, different markets. And then when I came to crypto, when I went into reading about Bitcoin and its white paper, I was able to, from my background, I have an engineering kind of background, so I was able to see like this makes sense. Why hadn't I ever read this? And instead of looking at the token or the currency that's floating around, look at the technical aspects of what it actually brings.
Yes.
And media was democratized in ways that people who have copyright on media, they got upset about. But in terms of the information and the entertainment value, like it seemed like cryptocurrency was like that, except for money, where money is traditionally kind of like a rigged game. So I saw cryptocurrency as like my way to kind of get ahead in terms of finances, right? So it's just like in video games, there's this one thing that you can see that is going to take off. Like this is kind of like that one thing that I can see.
Yeah.
And so I rode the Bitcoin train up and down, and then I realized this is great, but on a technical level, these are why it's not great. These are the cons. I found out the pros and I found out the cons, right?
Yep.
And then all these different projects were blossoming in 2017. All these ICOs, the ICO craze, everything was rocketing. I was like,
oh yeah,
I don't understand. Like, why is this token, like an ERC20 token on Ethereum, why is this worth so much money so quickly? Like, what is the project? What is the purpose behind this? This just seems like a stand-in for hope, for an idea.
I always just looked at them as competitors to one another, but they're all unique in functionality, which is what I think is really fascinating. And I think that there's so many buzzwords used in all these tech spaces too, that it's a lot of people I don't think understand even fundamentally like that, what that is. Like they are all different and they all do serve a unique purpose.
Yeah, they do. And that's so over the past few years, I got involved with this podcast in terms of its Slack, and I used to like be a degen and like show my like trading like stuff, and then at some point over the years, like that was a long bear market, right? I felt that.
Yes.
And I started looking like I did a podcast with D, one of the hosts on the show, where we actually went further into the technical aspects of Bitcoin and kind of broke down how each piece worked, so that we could understand what other projects might be having improvements on different parts of what Bitcoin was originally supposed to be. Right?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of see, okay, so this is the wheel of Bitcoin. This is the body. Like if Bitcoin were a car, right?
Yeah.
So then I can see that, okay, so this new project, we're replacing the wheels with like maybe better wheels in some regard.
Yeah.
And we're replacing the body with this project. And then all other projects were like, they're not even car related, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
So we're going from like, maybe it's cars to airplanes, or like for Ethereum, the added functionality that smart contracts had on the ecosystem overall, you could see that is a very important implementation, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the features that you can have, that you can tack on in addition to just having this digital token that's scarce.
That's so. I have I know that you're the ones interviewing me. But,
yeah, no. Ask your question.
So you know how like for 3D, there's different files that have different functionalities. Yeah. Some can carry texture maps. Some can carry animation information. It could different tokens enable different functionalities in the NFTs and the potential ability to like change them later or have them morph on their own over time. Like, is that something where this technology would help, or would that just be a coding invention?
I think so. I can't speak to the ERC 721 protocol in its entirety because in its entirety because I haven't dissected that one in particular. I have looked at ERC 20s and the original Bitcoin. So to answer your question, I can't say for 100% sure, but I do know that in my mind, when I look at the overall crypto space, I see that there are projects that. So in my mind, ERC 721, let me just say this first, is a hash, right? That's all it is, right? It's just extra information that's part of that token, right?
Yeah.
And so there is only so much information that I don't know how big it is. I guess it would depend on whatever the blockchain and how they develop their ERC 721 equivalent, because like there are multiple blockchains with smart contracts as well, right?
Yeah.
And they're also even faster than Ethereum and cheaper.
Yes.
And in terms of the hash for the ERC 721 itself, they can code that differently, but at the end of the day, you're still limited to like a fixed amount of information. It'll be like, let's say, I don't even know what the standard hash. So SHA-256 is 256 bits of information, right? So divided by 8. Let me just, man, I'm so rusty. So 32 characters, right? So how much information can you compress in 32 characters?
Yeah.
Or maybe I can do like crypto zombies. You can change, like, you can either reference a URL, you can reference like a file, which is very easy. That's low hanging fruit, right? And that's essentially what NFTs are right now. They're just referencing some media elsewhere, however file name that's encoded with that. 32 bits is, or 32 characters is what you have.
Yes.
And then for the crypto zombies, like, each section of those 32 characters would code for like the zombie hair color, the zombie body itself, the face properties. So you can only code so much information. I'll kind of keep saying that over and over again, but
no, but that's a good point that I don't think a lot of people understand.
Yeah. So in terms of like what you can do, it's kind of limited to how well your blockchain scales, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to move the NFT, right? Because that's kind of part of it. You don't want to just be stuck with an NFT forever. And so to be able to do operations and to be able to, your question was originally, can like I morph this NFT, right? Mm-hmm. Can I interact with it with another blockchain potentially?
Yeah. Or
yes,
yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially there. So you need to have this thing called like a bridge in order to transmit tokens back and forth between one blockchain and another blockchain.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you could, I don't know if it would be the best way to put in the information in a token and that transmits between the bridges, or to just have like a separate, like essentially a separate communication channel that's separate from token manipulation to transmit the information that this ERC 721 on Ethereum needs to change. And I'm sending that communication signal from like the Tron blockchain or something.
So, okay, that's super helpful. Something I would love to discuss, because I know that there's a lot of controversy around it. It seems like is the impact to the environment that NFTs are having. And I know that there's a lot of information, a lot of misinformation out there.
That is kind of overblown.
I know. And that's kind of what I wanted, because it appears, in my opinion, that people are mixing the term mining and minting, when minting is just, coding that thing, as opposed to mining it, which consumes a ton of energy, correct?
So mining does consume a ton of energy, but what people don't realize is
not a ton, but
relative
to an NFT.
But to an NFT, yes. Compared to an NFT. What people don't realize with mining is what our ecosystem has done is we've basically gone to every kind of power group there is when it comes to energy and says, we know, and this is something everybody knows, this is a problem that we've been trying to figure out for the last 100 years since someone came up with the light bulb and started distributing power, is you put out more power than is actually utilized.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to take some of that excess power, and that's what's occurring in China, it's what's occurring in the States. So instead of burning that off, they are actually building a bridge to consume that excess energy. Now, it's not all the excess energy, but it's a lot of it. That excess energy is already being created. So people are saying, "Oh, you're destroying the environment." And it's like, no, this energy is going to get burned off.
Yes,
it's going to dissipate because we haven't figured out how to have long-term batteries yet. We just haven't.
Yeah.
So we're utilizing that thing that's already being created and creating actually something of value. When it comes to the NFTs, they're just minted.
Yeah.
Their function is no different than creating a JPEG, the actual energy consumption and power fundamentally.
Yes.
I think it's just an attack vector to kind of mitigate and dispoo this kind of overall ecosystem, because it's just a way to people say, oh, it's, because clean energy in the future and the environment is very important. And this is another thing. Yeah. This is another thing that is going to be consuming energy. over time. It just will. It's just a factor. You have to build that in.
Yeah.
But I think they're just using it as a cudgel to just as a way of attacking it. And it has really fundamentally nothing to do overall about our energy structure, how much energy the cryptocurrencies altogether are consuming or doing, or anything like that.
I think you need to have a more nuanced discussion about proof of work versus proof of stake, right?
That's true.
I think so when you say NFT, so when you say, let me talk to both of you guys right now. So
give me information, because I need to arm myself for these conversations, because I want to make sure that when I'm rebutting, that I actually have the right information too, because I know that just some of these claims seem way too outrageous to even be remotely real.
It's interesting, because even if we tell you our anecdotal stories, and some of it is based on just looking at the statistics of energy consumption, you still should probably at least look for the information yourself, like the statistics yourself, because one thing is that I notice in any space, right, is observational bias. We could be looking at the same chart, but you could be interpreting it to support your claims, and I could be using it to support my claims.
Yep.
Which is kind of weird, because then we have this problem of interpretation of information, which is the ultimate, like, that's the root of the problem, right? So let me speak to the POS, or let me speak to proof of work originally, because that was the first one that came into the space. That was Bitcoin, right? So in terms of the amount of energy, right? So we're talking about energy and how green it is. In terms of energy consumption for proof of work for Bitcoin, the security is dependent upon how many miners, like how much hash rate is being contributed to the network, right? So the more people that connect that are mining Bitcoin, the more secure the network is, right? But the downside is that you have more devices which are consuming more energy, right? So when Alycia says that it's as easy to mint an NFT as it is to make a JPEG, it depends, right? Because it depends. Well, so we're on Ethereum, and Ethereum is proof of work right now, right? But it will be going to proof of stake. So right now, as it stands, minting an NFT does cost energy right now, and it ultimately will cost energy regardless, because even if I opened up MS Paint on my computer and I drew an image and I saved it as a JPEG, am I not still using electricity?
I was going to say, uploading a file to Box consumes energy. Yeah,
so you're consuming some energy at some level, but you're just not consuming as much as you would if it was like an NFT minted on like a proof of work chain versus a proof of stake chain. So proof of work is basically I get a higher probability of getting the next block rewards and of Bitcoin if I'm doing proof of work. And so it behooves me to to have a bunch of miners online that have really high hash rates that are really energy efficient, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to be consuming more energy relative to the probability that I want to get the next block rewards in Bitcoin if it's proof of work, right? But for proof of stake, it's entirely dependent upon how many tokens you actually own, right? So like depending on how many tokens you own, there are different consensus models and different ways of that the amount of tokens that you hold contribute to staking rewards, contribute to governance models. And so at the end of the day, it is more energy efficient to run NFTs on a proof of work or proof of stake system versus a proof of work system. But again, we're kind of like in this, maybe somebody will come up with something even like an even better model, and we're just going to put a new cart in front of that cart.
Yeah. And I mean, I would imagine that over time, and maybe this is an absurd claim, but it seems like as we move into more of a virtual existence, and metaverse becomes more common, and there's just more virtual interaction, more virtual meetings, etc., more virtual events, products being sold, going to, I would say, cut down on a lot of the energy consumption outside that's happening that needs to be reduced. And I think that potentially or hopefully could offset, you know, the energy consumption for what is going to be required to create these things in the future.
It's already been in progress, but 2020, what happened with the pandemic, has demonstrated in a very scientific way what the difference between outside energy consumption versus inside the digital world. And I assure you, within 5 years, when there's that hardcore peer-reviewed scientific studies about the environmental impact of this very much global 1 year everything happening to everybody, we'll see certain changes and stuff like that. And it's already occurring when people are thinking about redesigning their cities to make it more pedestrian.
Oh yeah,
I see that with different European cities have done this for the past couple of decades of removing roads, putting in bike lanes, walkthroughs, and Houston has this big project that they're trying to put where they're going to get rid of like one of their highways and put this green, like this section of the highway infrastructure in this green walkable passage area and part of their city, to make it to where the concept is something that used to be occurring before cars, where you have the grocery store within basically a 0.5 mile distance of people. You work within the few blocks where you live. So you're not going out, spreading out, if you will, and consuming cars, transportation, goods and services and stuff like that coming to you and stuff like that. It's going to be reduced. It's not going to be eliminated, but there will be.
Of course not. Yeah. It will be reduced. But yeah, even you think about the butterfly effect of all of those things too, or if you keep going and counting like the production needs to make the physical goods that are out there being made, like so much of that stuff.
And some of that's becoming localized depending on the overall infrastructure of your country as it is, to where particularly with, like in your world, 3D, with 3D printers and the changing in manufacturing and the becoming more robotic, and manufacturing is becoming through an interesting space where you might necessarily not need to have someone coming in from a different country with their product. You might just get, they're already doing pieces, but the pieces might last a bit longer because it's more efficient to break it apart and create more things. You're not transporting as much, or it's just overall people are thinking of these things are changing to where you're not, you're still going to have trade and all that stuff, but you're not doing as much of it, if you will. It's just more efficient, and it's not consuming as much energy or things of that nature. These are things that are being discussed and planned out, and they're seeing little bits of this happening already. And whether or not it's going to be enough of a global impact to where we're not having, they keep changing the doomsday when it comes to climate change being a permanent thing, but actually changing the environment and changing overall structure and even people structures, if you will, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be too long until Amazon just comes over and like changes your diaper and makes sure you're fed.
Amazon's becoming the way-owned company. Name the sci-fi dystopian corporation, and it's.
Oh yeah. But I mean, So, I have a question too. So, this is just kind of a topic that I personally am always interested in, is the discussion of like digital versus virtual assets. The difference between like a JPEG versus a 3D file, which you can actually go into and it is immersive, and you can utilize those digital assets in there. But digital is really a language that can host information, and it can create programs that can read that information to create these virtual environments. So, excuse me. And the reason that it's something that's important to me is because as a 3D artist, I think a lot of the time, the perception is that it's super easy for us to go in and make a revision. Like we just paint over it, not realizing that it's not flat. Like the JPEG that you get out of it is just like us having taken a virtual picture in that environment. Like we're just doing a virtual photography. So when people are confused about what the image is, if it's 3D or not, it's like, it's just an image. If it was a 3D, you wouldn't be able to see it. But there's such a So I would consider that stuff virtual drawing and painting, because you're literally doing a virtual version of what you would be doing in the physical world. And then in the immersive world, you have surfacing, which is CAD work. You've got polygon modeling, which is all the entertainment industry work. You've got sculpting, you've got lighting, you've got virtual material. You have all of these other crafts that exist within there, and that's expanding. So I just think it does us a little bit of a disservice to just classify all of us as digital artists. I feel like you're an artist, and then you're classified either like as a virtual XYZ or a physical XYZ. You know what I mean? But to say digital artist is like to say, yeah, we need to hire an artist, and you hire an illustrator when you need an architect.
Like, you're saying you wish categorically people were more nuanced?
Yeah, and we will need to get there, I think. And that's just something that I've been starting to try to speak up about a little bit more often, because I think that the more people can understand our space, and they can appreciate it more. Because I think that everybody, I keep saying everybody, I think that there is a conception that it's a lot of you push a button and it does something, as opposed to it just being another tool. And you're just in there doing that craft that you would be doing in this world virtually. So yeah, I think having it more nuanced would bring a lot more appreciation to it, and and just allow people to enjoy it even more.
I think you're right. I've been having kind of conversations with people that we generalize too much because it's more digestible. The reality of the world is that, I paint myself, like I said, I'm an engineer, right? But I'm an electrical engineer, and my background is robotics, physical world, right?
Yeah.
I don't really do coding. I can kind of sift through it, but if I broad brush, say I'm an engineer, that kind of tells you I have some sort of tech, science-y, math background-ish, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe I have the foundation to kind of go through this, which is what I'm trying to, that's the intent, right? I'm trying to get across. And so I think I'm in favor of people being more nuanced, but I also recognize the realities that we don't have enough time. We all, as humans, are so nuanced in what we do well, because that's what society values. Everybody being highly nuanced, right? And so unfortunately, you're only going to be able to capture that subculture that can understand what you do, because they either really just enjoy it. There has to be some motivation that draws them to understand something further, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't really motivate the world as a whole to understand everything, right? It's kind of impossible. Although I would love that. That's an ideal, right?
Yeah. I can motivate very few people. So the whole world would be very challenging.
Exactly. So like, I think I would love that personally, because like I would love to understand everything. But I don't have the time. And I wish I did, right?
It's funny though, because half of learning a lot of these things is unlearning the buzzwords and the things that overcomplicate something that's potentially very simple, like data and algorithms. Like those are terms that people think are super like you have to have a science degree to work with them. And it's like, no, it is literally just a process. Like, but we trap ourselves in these corners, I think, and we talk to ourselves so much about revolution and things like that without really having just a super clear focus on what that means a lot of the time. And it makes it hard too, working with clients also that don't really understand the space. Because they are always asking for stuff that either doesn't make sense, or they said that I delivered the donkey with a cupcake on it. You're just like, that doesn't even make sense. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like those words don't make sense in my reality.
A lot of so I'm gonna be asking you a question later on in the interview. It's kind of like a wrap-up question.
Okay.
But it's more of like communication. Communication is something that, as an engineer, I'm not so great at. But I realize real world consequences and real world application, it is insanely important to be able to communicate things and to be able to bridge the lexicon difference that you have as a professional in what you do and your client, right? And their lack of, because they're coming to you, right? And you have to like find the words to explain to them, this is what I can do. These are the limitations. This is what you can build within, right?
Yeah.
And so it's difficult.
I completely agree. Okay, so when do you want to get into the trivia?
The trivia? What trivia?
I just thought you said that there was going to be.
So my wrap up question. We don't have to wrap up. We don't have to wrap up now, but I'll just hit you with it. All right. So my question is what you do actually hard?
For me, no, or I wouldn't do it. Well, I mean, that sounds super lame, but like,
no, I mean, that's so explained.
If it was super hard for me, then I probably wouldn't be as attracted to it because you enjoy things that you're good at. I think it's deceptively hard looking. It's not easy. There's a ton of stuff to learn. There is just click down menu after click down menu, and no one realizes that doing virtual hair, there's so many elements of it that you have to tweak, like the curliness, the scale of the curl, the sheening of it. There's so many variables that you can learn, and it becomes it's not what you can do, it's what do you want to do. Like you can literally do anything in the virtual universe as long as you've got the power, the software, and the energy.
Except for water.
What,
is water like one of the hardest virtualizations more so than hair?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
but that's
what I hear.
That's a perfect example, though. Yeah. But when you understand how it works, you're like, oh, that's actually really clever. I would have never thought about that. But at the same time, there's a million click downs. But the click downs are sometimes like springiness or bounciness. It's not like you need to know physics to do it. That's another, I think, big misconception. And the more creatives that start to use these tools, the more user experience is becoming a focus, and these tools are becoming easier and easier to use. So, I don't think it's hard. I think there's some of it is hard, and but it's no harder than anything else. You know what I mean? But I would say it's not hard for me, and that's the thing. Like with skateboarding, it wasn't hard for me, but now it is. So, but it's hard to give myself credit for something that comes naturally that I didn't necessarily work harder than somebody else maybe, but just accomplish different results.
You loved. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Alycia.
You spoke about like the drop down menus. As an artist, I see like a lot of these apps or these digital apps allow for whether it be the kind of the digital or even 3D renderings that artists do. Do you appreciate like an artist that just comes with like an iPhone and you're like blown away? And if you were to attempt to do something like on a regular program, you're like,
see,
iPhone.
That's so interesting because there's like a video app that I use on my phone for editing that has probably 10 buttons on it. But I can do everything I need that I can't do in QuickTime or in iMovie on it. It's so easy. But again, I think it's about what you need to accomplish. Like it's such a two-dimensional, you can go this way and this way with video. So there's not that much that you need to be aware of. But yes, there's, you want to have something that's like easy to drive and intuitive, but you also want to have complete control over it. I think that's where that handoff. You don't want to have over automation. You don't want to be too restricted. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
it does make sense. Yeah.
It's interesting because there's this ongoing discussion. I used CAD. I've used CAD. I've used 3D modeling programs because what I had to, basically make parts, like they call it, like fast or rapid prototyping. Anyway. So, but it's interesting because you and I know that there's functionality that you can code in multiple languages. Every one of these applications has their own extension scripts that you can code yourself.
Yeah.
I don't dabble with those. I've seen I've seen like I don't know if you do.
I mean, like plugins essentially, or like writing your own code for
writing your own code for a functionality that doesn't exist.
Okay, that is where I'm saying I want to learn to code or something, because those guys are wizards. They're literally like warlocks of the virtual world. They can, if they want to do something, they can make it happen. It is unreal. And again, it's all just broken down into the simple mathematics, but always way overly complicated.
You know what? When I was going through Solidity, which is the programming language for Ethereum, with D, one of the hosts, he was like, I don't understand why this function has this function name. That's so dumb. If I could redo this, I would name it something more, and he would suggest something more simple, something more, common sense. And it's just interesting.
Well, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Rachel Sibley, but
no, I'm not.
She had a really great TED talk about the economy of attention, or currency of attention, or the attention economy, something like that. But she was talking about how in an immersive environment, in a 3D environment, things are much less abstract than they are in like a 2D virtual environment. Like when you have a picture on your phone that looks like an old telephone, and it's just on this like weird block. Like nothing on this is intuitive. Nothing on this works like you think it would. This, you go over and you pick it up and you lift it up and it does what you think it's gonna do. When we move into the metaverse, I think that's gonna be a lot more common. It'll be easier to operate in there because things will just operate as you expect them to. What the area that I work in is like behind the scenes of the metaverse. We're the people creating content. We're the creators of the metaverse, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think things will get, it's like, digital gets really hard, and then I think it's going to hit a tipping point where it's just going to become easy.
So are you saying that you need haptic control over interactability with objects to kind of complete the circle in terms of making you're using the metaverse, this word?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that everything will be virtualized eventually. Everything is just, all of your sensory devices are just inputs, and then they go to a signal that's read by your brain. So I don't know why all of these things can't just be virtualized over time.
So like you don't want to, like, in your mind, does interacting with the metaverse require you to move your body?
Oh, that's a great question, huh? I would say no, because it's a vehicle for your brain, really, in my opinion. So if your brain's up there or wherever, whatever virtual body, as long as you can control it by thought, then I would think you don't need your body, but currently you do. You need your hands. Right.
That's why we have VR and like we have force feedback.
Yes,
but exactly. It's just interesting how you think that. I would like it. I would like like those sci-fi movies where you just put on like a headset and bam, you don't have to move your body. You're in wherever chair you just was zonked off.
Oh yeah. Well, think about. I mean, humans have such a problem saying like, "Oh, that'll never happen." Like, think back 10 years to how far we've come so quickly. That stuff. It's just not that far-fetched anymore, I don't think.
I think there's so when I touched autonomous vehicles, I realized that this is not going to happen. And so if you look at the result, is they started setting these levels for autonomous, and so like level 5 is now fully autonomous.
Oh yeah,
and they're like, we're at level 4 now, and I'm like, all right, so that's how you're gonna market your way around this is not really gonna happen for a long time,
Yeah, but again, innovation will constantly happen.
Yeah,
and it's getting more and more challenging to do in the real world. The material sciences and things like that. Like, so much has been done before, and so little has been done in the virtual world. We're still in like the caveman days at this point.
We are. We actually.
Did I
we are.
Offend the producer?
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't think your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the trajectory and the pattern of innovation over time, it's like you were saying, we were just always delegating work. We're delegating things over time. And now we're starting to hand off things instead of to like a pneumatic or an electrical engine or something machine. We're starting to allocate it to be virtual. And that's like we're virtualizing these things, meaning we're handing off just things that we normally have to do.
It's gonna be like the Matrix. We're just gonna get like a tube fed.
That's what I'm saying. Amazon will just come change our diaper. Like it's all that will be necessary.
That's I don't know if I like that.
It'll be by choice. Trust me. I don't.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
If you think about it, too, like there's no physical limitations. There's no speed limitations. There's no limitations of proximity in there. So where are people going to want to spend most of their time? Like where you can fly or where you can't fly. So, and that's where I think bringing it full circle. I think that is the future, is buying capabilities as NFTs.
Capabilities.
Yes, for avatars. Avatar capabilities is where I think this is headed.
So like my ability to fly is an NFT, and I got to buy that.
Exactly. You buy that functionality, which is just a chunk of code that you install into your software or onto your computer, and then the software reads it and makes sense of it. Like I know Kung Fu, or what, you know.
I know Kung Fu. Oh gosh.
That's what it should be called. The functionality is I know Kung Fu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll take the Kung Fu kit.
All right. Well, so let me ask you, do you want to wrap it up, Chad?
That would be great. I have another meeting in a little bit.
Let's do this. All right. So the last question, which is our signature question of the podcast, is how would you describe, and this can be, you can use Bitcoin, DeFi, NFTs in 10 words or less.
I think, no, I won't waste a word on I think. The democratization of our world, I would say, or our experiences.
Okay.
But it's or the democratization of information, maybe, is a better way of saying it. Like I feel like everything is becoming peer-to-peer more, and I think that and all these things can be shared now immediately, and there's no distance limitations. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense to me. I'm not sure. I think if I gave you more time, I'm sure you could condense it.
Oh yeah. I'm sure,
but I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Digital ownership is the other thing.
It is.
I mean, that's really truly what it is. That's the game-changing part of it, is the ability to finally prove ownership of a digital asset, which, you know, we've had that need in IRL for a long time.
Yeah.
There's no reason we shouldn't need it in a virtual environment as well. That was like 40 words, I think.
Break it down. I there's a couple of different phrases. If you go digital ownership, a proof of ownership, that's 5 words, 6 words. Democratization of information is 3. I think that's the only number shortest.
Yeah,
you're in. You got it.
Awesome. Perfect.
All right, and we're out.
Yeah. How do we close?